So within 5 minutes, we have the phone number of an actual celebrity and we're texting back and forth. Whoa. So when I was a kid, I listened to Nickelback a lot, like millions of other people. Fast forward a few years later and I find myself in an airplane talking to the drummer of Nickelback about their latest world tour above a glacier. So my friend offered to try putting me in touch with Daniel, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a Nickelback fan growing up, so I couldn't pass up on the opportunity. Here's the story of how it happened. My name is Matt Mosveen. I do a talk show called Radio Chatter.
My name is Matt Mosveen and you're on air with Radio Chatter. It's the show where we take interesting people flying over breathtaking views and ask them questions that they've never been asked before.
It's at 10,000 feet in the sky. We take guests flying in an airplane and interview them above mountains, glaciers, lakes, something really awe-inspiring and cool. Flying has been a lifelong passion for me, so I really like sharing that with the rest of the world. And what I really realized was there's a lot more work that goes into producing the show than I ever thought and that one from the outside might ever assume. So I decided I'd probably be best to start creating some videos to document the process and talk through some of the stories of what happens behind the scenes. So I'm really excited to share with you today the story of how we got Nickelback's drummer Daniel Adhered to agree to come on the show. So how did this happen? How did this come to be? My friend saw the show and his friend knows Daniel Adhered. So he goes, my buddy texts me and he goes, hey, do you want me to text my friend because he knows Daniel and maybe see if Daniel would be interested in coming on the show? And of course I'm gonna go, sure, yeah, that sounds amazing. So my friend texts his friend and his friend texts Daniel and goes, hey Daniel, is this something that you would be interested in maybe exploring a little bit more? So Daniel says yes. And so it comes back to me, and then within 5 minutes, it's kind of crazy how quickly it happened, but within 5 minutes, I've got Daniel Adhered's phone number, and now I'm texting back and forth with Daniel. And no, if you're wondering if I would give you Daniel Adhered's phone number, I can't give you Daniel's phone number. So this is what I find so interesting about interpersonal connections. I didn't know that my friend had a friend that knew Daniel. There's a whole world out there in your interpersonal network that is indirect to you, that you have very little awareness. It's actually a lot more accessible than most people believe that it is, and I believe that those networks are a lot easier to get access to. But the thing is that you have to give people a compelling reason to give you access to their networks. And so that's a lot more powerful if the idea to make that intro comes from the person that you know, as opposed to maybe you asking for it. And that's not to say that you can't ask for an intro. You definitely can, but it's a lot more genuine and it's a lot more compelling typically if it comes from the person going like, hey, I saw this thing and like I have this idea that I think you guys would be really good for. If you put in a lot of effort and you just consistently show up in life and you try and you put your best foot forward, those doors just start to naturally open up for you, and people really want to help you by giving you access to other people in their networks. And so you can perpetuate that, of course, by helping other people that you think are really deserving of access, or you're just creating opportunities for one another. But the point is that you can list out all the people that you think you know, and you know 10 times as many of those people by 1 degree of indirect separation. And if you show up and people see that you're doing good, then they're gonna want to open those doors for you and help make those connections. So awesome. Daniel wants to go on the show, and so we book a time and go flying tomorrow, right? Not quite. I wish that's what happened, but as you can imagine, the drummer of Nickelback is a pretty busy guy. And so there's a lot of patience involved with coordinating schedules and getting a day that everybody's available for, because it's not even just the drummer, it's also the weather, and it's the airplane's availability, and it's the videographer, etc. So the back and forth process to finding the right day took about 6 months. So there was quite a bit of coordination behind the scenes, but it was super rewarding when we actually got the day and the weather was good. It's also important to note that it's not just like an hour or two. Yeah, the video that you're watching when you see an episode of Radio Chatter is between 20 and 30 minutes, and there's a couple TikToks and stuff, but the actual footage that goes into shooting the episode of Radio Chatter is about 3 to 4 hours of flying, and we have the cameras rolling for probably about 2 hours of dialogue, and then obviously we go and cut it and edit it up after. But yeah, let's say the flight is about 3-4 hours. And of course, the guest has to drive to and from the airport, and there's a little bit of shooting on the ground, and there's getting the airplane ready. So a Radio Chatter shoot is basically an entire day for somebody. You're asking somebody who's really busy for an entire day of their time. That's a really big commitment for that person. And so that's part of the reason why I always joke that this is one of the worst podcast ideas or worst talk show ideas of all time, is that it's so inconvenient and there's so much time associated with it, but the end result is totally worth it. So I'm going to keep doing it. Okay, so 6 months go by and there's some back and forth. Does this day work for you? Does this day work? Another thing is that because of the weather, you don't really know if the first day or if the day that you plan for the shoot is going to be good weather until within a day or two of the actual shoot. And so you can do all this planning and then it's cloudy and you can't go do it. And so for that reason, we book 2 days. We have a primary day and then a weather backup day. So to make matters worse, you're actually asking the guest for 2 days, basically. But hopefully you shoot it right the first time and then you don't need the second day. So we figure out what those 2 days are going to look like. And so the back and forth for 6 months has finally led to a couple of days. And so I go research and I come up with questions and book everything. And all of a sudden, here we are 6 months later. And the day is finally here. Super exciting. The day is here. We're going to shoot with Daniel. So we shoot out of Pitt Meadows Airport in Vancouver. And of course, I'm flying out of Victoria Airport in Victoria, British Columbia. And so I let him know, hey, like we're getting the plane ready. We're about to take off. It's about 10 a.m. in Victoria. And so he's like, okay, sweet. I'll go to the airport in Pitt Meadows. We get to Pitt Meadows Airport. We land there. It's a beautiful sunny day. And I'm like, okay, we're here at the airport. We just parked. And of course, he's right there. Like he knows the code for the gate, and because he's a pilot himself. Daniel flies, and so he's flown out of Pitt Meadows Airport many times. So it's kind of funny. Like he actually could show me around the airport at Pitt Meadows. He spent a lot more time there than I have. And so we hop in, we do the ground shoot, we do a couple slow-mo videos, putting on headsets and stuff like that, and then we fire up the engine and boom, 30 minutes later, we're over at Garibaldi Lake and we're shooting the episode. We're having a really good conversation. It's really cool. So that's pretty much how it happened. All it really took was an indirect connection and that I wasn't even aware of. So put in the work when nobody's looking and you're gonna find that people start unlocking these magical little doors for you that you didn't even know about. So that's the story of how we convinced Nickelback's drummer Daniel Adhered to come on the show. That's the sequence of events for 6 months of how we got the intro all the way up to how we actually found ourselves in an airplane over Garibaldi Lake shooting an interview. So now we'll show you a teaser for the episode.
All I knew was that how music touched me, and I would lie in bed at night listening to Rush, Extra Stage Left. That was a live Rush album.
Right.
Listen to Neil Peart's drum solo and how I felt, and I'd hear the crowd cheering, and I would say to myself, I want to make people feel the way I do one day.
Wow.
I always felt like I...
Like, subscribe, follow, and we'll definitely be sharing the episode all over the place when it releases. Thanks so much for watching.